Chapter 1 A Transfer Student. One morning, a boy named Dong transferred to 5th grade, Class B, from a rural school. Before class, the students lined up by height to find a seat for him. Dong was tall, so he fit perfectly between Sonam and Bongnam and sat there. Because of that, Sonam and Bongnam, who had been sitting together at the same desk and spending time happily until yesterday, had to be separated. Sonam ended up sitting with Dong at the same desk, while Bongnam moved to the desk in front to sit with another student. This made Bongnam feel a bit sad, and, at the same time, a little annoyed with Dong. Until yesterday, Sonam and Bongnam sat together at the same desk. During class, they whispered fun stories while the teacher wrote on the board. They sometimes quietly played tricks in their notebooks, pinched each other's thighs, and laughed in a way the teacher wouldn't notice. But from today, they couldn't do that anymore, and it became hard for them to endure even a single hour sitting apart. When the first class ended, the two kids gathered in a corner of the playground, as if they had planned it. That was so boring. Why did 1 hour be so long? Sonam said, putting his hand on Bongnam's shoulder. I know, I couldn't stand it. It gave me such a headache. If only Dong hadn't come, this wouldn't have happened, Bongnam replied. Really? How can you find any joy in coming to school like this? Sonam sighed. And did you see that nasty mark on Dong's left cheek? I can't stand looking at it, Sonam added. Yeah, it looks just like an itchy worm. That just makes me dislike Dong even more, Bongnam said. Yeah, exactly. That mark really does look like an itchy worm. Let's give him a nickname, Itchy Worm, from now on, Sonam said excitedly. As the two kids were talking, the bell rang. It was the bell signaling the start of the second class. Oh no, how are we going to get through another hour? Sighing, Sonam and Bongnam went back to the classroom with the other kids. A day or two passed. The other students also started teasing Dong by calling him Itchy Worm, just like Sonam and Bongnam did. In this situation, Dong, coming from the countryside, seemed clumsy in the way he spoke and tied his clothes compared to the other kids. Even on the playground, Dong didn't play with the others. Instead, he often went to a corner under the poplar tree and read a book by himself. Hey, look over there! The itchy worm is reading a book. When one kid said this, the others repeated it, shouting, Hey, hey! At Dong. However, Dong-il rarely responded. Hey, you're such a bookworm. Studying that much. You should at least be getting first place. A bookworm like you would probably cry if you didn't come in first. One kid said. Yeah, if I studied that much, I'd get first place too. Another kid chimed in. This kind of talk spread among the kids. But as time went by, it turned out that Dong-il was a student who excelled in every subject. For this reason, many kids teased Dong-il, but couldn't ignore him. He wasn't very playful, but he was a strong-willed and considerate student. However, the noticeable scar on his left cheek still made him the target of teasing from some kids. Chapter 2. Bayard Honor. One day, before starting the lesson, the principal stood at the front, holding a letter in his hand. Strangely, he wore a stern expression as he looked down at the students. Many of the children naturally sat quietly, wondering what was going on. I want to share a beautiful story with you today. It's about one of my friends who works as an elementary school teacher in the countryside. Yesterday, he sent me a letter. In the letter, he mentioned that a student from his school recently transferred to ours, and he asked me to keep an eye on the student, saying this particular student is a good one. When the principal finished speaking, many children turned to look at Dong-il's face. Dong-il kept his head down, silently. Sharing this story will be much more beneficial than studying moral education for 5 or 6 hours. So, I'll read it to you now. Saying this, the principal took a letter out of the envelope, unfolded it with both hands, and began reading it clearly. You might remember the noticeable scar on the left cheek of that child. It might cause discomfort among other children. However, in truth, that scar is an honorable and remarkable one. It comes from an incident that happened last spring. Dong-il was sitting near the mine, reading a book, while 2 children were playing a game not far from him. At that moment, a mine cart, loaded with coal, came speeding down the hill at full force. When the driver saw the children, it was too late to stop, so he shouted, "Get out of the way! Get out of the way!" However, the 2 children were so absorbed in their game that they didn't hear him. It was already too late to prevent a disastrous accident. But at that moment, when Dong-il saw this, he, without a moment's hesitation, rushed forward and pushed the 2 children off the road and fell to the ground himself. Almost at the same time, the mine cart passed by. Fortunately, Dong's body was outside the road, so his body wasn't hurt. But the mine cart wheel hit his left cheek. The brave boy, Dong-il, ended with a scar that would stay with him for life. To save the two children. Bleeding, Dong-il lost consciousness on the spot. Even when he woke up, without thinking about his own pain, he asked, "How are the children?" Everyone who heard this was moved by his generous heart that they couldn't hold back their tears. Truly, Dong-il was a treasure of our school. He was not only good at his studies, but also kind at heart. When I heard that Dong-il was moving to Seoul due to family circumstances, I felt as sad as if I were sending away my own child. However, I was relieved to hear that he would be attending your school. Please guide him well so that he may grow into a great person in the future. The principal's voice began to tremble more and more. Tears welled up in the eyes of many children who sat silently, holding their breath. I learned a few days ago that many students had been teasing Dong-il. However, even when he heard such words, it seemed as though Dong-il didn't defend his honorable scar and just quietly listened. Tears eventually filled the principal's eyes. The classroom was as silent as a grave. The children who had teased Dong-il by calling him an inch worm couldn't lift their heads, feeling regret and shame. Some couldn't hold back their tears and wiped their eyes with their sleeves, sobbing softly. "Everyone," I cried while reading this letter, "there is nothing more touching to the human heart than a beautiful act of sacrifice. No one in the world wants to get hurt. However, putting aside concern for oneself to save others is not something just anyone can do." Think of the joy of the two children whose lives were saved, and their parents, thanks to Dong-il. Though Dong-il has a scar on his face, those two children didn't get hurt at all. Even the principal, who was usually so fluent, found himself at a loss for words today, overwhelmed by emotion. Everyone starting today, I encourage you to take Dong-il as a role model. On behalf of the children, I apologize to Dong-il for calling him a winged worm, which may have made him feel uncomfortable. The principal said this and then looked at Dong-il, calling out, Dong-il. Dong-il quietly lifted his head. Dong-il, from now on, think of me as a teacher from your old rural school. Dong-il quietly stood up and said, No, not at all. I haven't felt uncomfortable even once since coming to this school. If anything, I'm sorry for not being more friendly to all of you. What beautiful words, and what a generous heart. The principal was moved once again, and the sound of snippers could be heard here and there in the classroom. A little later, Sunam walked over to Dong-il. Dong-il, please forgive me. I was wrong. I'm the one who gave you the nickname Ichi-won. Sunam said this, placing her hand on his chest. Tears started falling, drop by drop, from his lowered face. No, it was me who gave the nickname. Please forgive me, Bok-nam said, bowing his head this time. The teacher smiled and said, I am truly happy, and since you all are sincerely reflecting on your past mistakes, I'm sure Dong-il will forgive you as well. In just 10 or 20 minutes, your hearts have become clear and pure, entirely inspired by Dong-il's beautiful spirit of sacrifice. From now on, if you kept that heart unchanged and moved forward, this classroom will always be more beautiful than a spring garden full of flowers. The teacher's face lit up with joy, and tears once again welled up in his eyes. They were tears of happiness. From that moment on, the scar on Dong-il's cheek became a precious treasure of the school, shining forever.